And we are back. And again, welcome to the Rabbis Roundtable, the first show in 2023. And we're very excited. My next guest is a very interesting individual. Not only did he just recently come back from Cuba, but Scott Cohen has been around the world and has been helpful in a number of issues. And I recently learned that Scott undertook a journey to the Ukraine to help cook for war refugees. That has to be transformative. And I want to talk about this. First, well, welcome to the Rabbis Roundtable. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. And you went to Lviv?
I went outside of Lviv.
And then I also know you were in Poland?
I started in Poland.
Yeah, cool. Well, so this is really important. This is not just interesting. This is important. As an American citizen, as a
Human.
As a human
yes.
being. Yeah, I can give sermons about this, but we're going to talk about it anyway. What prompted you to do this? What's the motivation?
You know what, Rabbi, I will be honest with you. I cannot tell you the seminal moment where I made this decision. I don't watch a lot of news on TV, or I don't watch a lot of TV. I was reading an article, I was talking with my wife, and there was something about the fact that they were having a hard time feeding the refugees and the numbers that were coming through, running for their lives. And I looked at Madeline, my wife, and I said, I want to go. I have a skill, I have a talent, I can cook for a lot of people.
Yep.
And so I want to go. And I started reaching out to various organizations, and I booked a flight. I booked a one-way flight to Warsaw, Poland, figuring I'll go anywhere in Europe to help. So plan A was go and hook up with one of these organizations that was already there on the ground feeding refugees. The feedback and the ability to get information was very awkward and difficult, and sometimes the information coming back wasn't exactly what I was looking for, i.e. they're filling box lunches, and, so they're passing out candy bars and sandwiches, and I really wanted to go and cook for these people.
Do you speak the language?
I speak no foreign languages. I struggle with English, but I speak food, and I've traveled the world, and I can speak food. Yeah. And what happened was 3 days before I left, I was connected with a priest. I was given the name of a priest in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, who I was told was very involved in the Ukraine, and he was the guy to talk to. However, he was also impossible to reach. And that's not something that impossible isn't part of my vernacular. So I literally wrote to the church he was at, I texted, I found a phone number, I called and left a message, I emailed every board member. Anyway, within an hour, I got a call back from this priest who had been very much involved in raising money for the effort. So he was the one that the rock stars would call when they were looking to donate $1 million type thing. So, the fact is he called me back, and the call went back and forth a couple of times before we actually had a moment to have a conversation. But he said, look, can you really cook for a lot of people? And I said, yes, I can. He said, okay, I need you in the Ukraine.
Wow.
And I said, Father, I appreciate that. My wife has been extremely supportive of what I'm doing. She has put one condition on it, and that is that I not go to the Ukraine. In other words, not go into the war zone.
Sure, sure.
And he said, I understand. I said, look, I'll go to Poland, I'll go to Spain, I'll go anywhere the refugees are. He says, I need you in the Ukraine. He said, I need you. It's pretty far west, so it's out of, quote, the hot zones, but I need you there. And he explained that there were two women who had been cooking at this church and this, what they call the Pilgrim House, which was part of a tour of churches in the Ukraine, and you would do these pilgrim tours.
So what did you cook? What was it? Well, tell us what your day was like.
So I started at 5:30 in the morning. The two women that were cooking had been doing this nonstop since the war started. The church opened their doors, and they had between 50 and 200 people at any
every day.
Every day.
Wow.
And the meals, they served 3 meals a day, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And the meals were not just buffet style, they were plated.
Wow.
So it was really to make people feel like
Some sense of normalcy.
normalcy and being human and being, it wasn't just come and take a sandwich. I mean, there was a beautiful plate like you would get in a restaurant, and there would, you know, the tables were set, and it was really done to make them feel like
Human.
they were human. Exactly.
And who provided the food?
So there was 8 organizations delivered food daily to the church. Everything from the Red Cross to other organizations around the world. 2 things about it. One, a lot of that food being delivered is processed, which I don't eat and I didn't want to serve. And 2 was that it was in different quantities and different qualities. So an example is that the pantry had a whole shelf of rice, but that rice could be from 15 different countries. The languages on the packages were in 15 different languages, and I didn't have the skill to figure out, well, this is long range rice. And, and so that was one challenge. But the second is that I made a decision that this was something that my wife and I wanted to support. And so I brought enough money to buy food, and I went to the market in Liv and bought food and came back and cooked it. Wow. And so I ended up, the first thing is I would get driven to the market, and the first thing I did, on my Google Translate, was I typed a note saying, this is a cook from the United States, and he is feeding the refugees at the church, and he would appreciate the best deal or additional product if you would. And I showed that to whoever who took me to the market, and they would look at it and go, no, you know, this isn't what we do. And I just read that, okay? And they did. And believe it or not, the people who at the market read or heard that said, oh my gosh, let me give you a bag of extra vegetables, or let me give you a basket of this, or you know what, this part of the meat, we're not going to charge you for it. And so I ended up getting, and they saw this, I mean, even though it wasn't part of their culture, they saw that people in the Ukraine actually really wanted to support this also. I bought things that I'd never bought before. I bought a half a lamb to start with, but I didn't have time to get it butchered. Yeah. So I literally carried it over my shoulders, right, and put it in the car. And as we're driving back, I'm texting people that are in the restaurant industry and people who I know are cooks and my butcher, and saying, okay, how does one go about doing this? And they say, well, get your big chef knife and get a saw and get your cleaver. And I'm writing back, I don't have any of these things. But the best advice I got was get an axe. and
Yeah.
find somebody with an axe, and I found the woodshed in the back, and there was Sasha with a big axe, and he helped me butcher
Cool.
lamb. But I would buy whatever I could, and then bring it back to the church and cook.
What about the political climate? What did you experience? Did you encounter any Russians?
I made a point of trying to avoid
Okay.
political
Oh, that
and
makes sense.
religious conversations. That doesn't mean that I didn't get exposed to
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
The fact of the matter is that, look, the reason that I'm doing this, my whole thing was to do this anonymously. I wasn't looking for any
Sure. Publicity, any
publicity
recognition.
or needing to tell it publicly. This was something very personal. The last night, well, along the way, the priest came to me and said there was a journalist who had contacted him and had been trying to contact me, and did I get the email or the message? And I said, you know what, truthfully, I don't check my phone, I don't check my email. And he said, well, this is kind of important, this is our national news, and we'd really like you to get the story out about the refugees and what the church is doing. And so I returned the call, and I ended up on their national news. The last day I was there, the priest sat me down, and they said, you know, we so appreciate everything you've done, but we are going to ask one favor of you. We would like you to make sure to tell others about the story, because people hear about the war, and they hear about the destruction, and they hear about the soldiers, and they hear about the conflict and the politics, but not a lot of people are aware of what the refugees are going through.
Yeah.
And along the way, the priest, right when I got there after crossing the border into Poland, the priest asked me, he said, why are you here? Why are you here? And he's using his translator, and I'm using my translator. And I had been on the road for 36 hours to get to where I was going to be. And I said, you know what, if you had asked me this yesterday, I couldn't have answered this question, but I can now. And I answer it this way. If my wife, if my daughter were running for their lives, escaping the war, seeing their city be destroyed and everything around them going and being blown up, I would hope in my heart that there is somebody on the other side that would feed them, that would offer them sanctuary, offer them safety, and give them a hug. And so for me, that was a defining moment.
Well, you're here, I told you that I think this is a very important story, not just to publicize what you've done, but to make, certainly from a clergy perspective, this is a role model moment.
So on the national news,
Yes.
they interviewed me for a while and took pictures of me in the kitchen. But then they interviewed some of the refugees, but they also interviewed the priests.
Yes.
And the priest, there's the moment that I thought was in some way ironic and comical, and you as a clergy would appreciate, is that the priest said, look, we opened our doors to the refugees. We did this because this is what we do. We're leaders within our community, and this is in our being. This is your job, this is their job, is to take care of your community. He said, this guy shows up and he has no relationships with anyone in the Ukraine. He has no friends or family. He is not even baptized. But I showed up, and he said, look, it made a difference.
You know, my favorite passage in all of the Gospels is in Matthew 23. Well, no, it's not Matthew.
I'm not familiar.
No, it's okay. That's actually not. It's as you do to the least of me, least of among us, so I will do for you. And that you have just exemplified that passage.
I thank you. It's funny because again, I'm not religious. I've told
It's
you
not.
this.
It's not about.
And
It's not about being religious.
No, I understand.
It's about being human.
And while I was there, somebody sent me a note and referred to a biblical passage that I actually had to ask the priest. I said, what does this mean? and so it's.
Well, you really do establish a role model for lots of us on a lot of levels. We've been talking to Scott Cohen. Scott just came back from feeding. How many people did you feed? Do you have any idea?
It was between 50 and 200 people a day.
Wow.
And breakfast was at 9 o'clock sharp.
Yeah.
Dinner was at 6 o'clock sharp.
Yeah.
When I got there, people would kind of wander in along, just over a period of an hour or so. Within a week of them tasting and eating my food, the line started forming about 5:45.
Wow.
And literally went all the way up the stairs.
Wow,
So,
that's terrific. Well, Scott, thank you not only for what you've done and for the example that you set for us, but for being on the Rabbis Roundtable. There's more discussion in this, and you'll come back. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for having me.
Appreciate it. We will be back momentarily, Easton.